Thanks everyone for tuning in this Choir Nerd podcast. I'm thrilled to have my man Tim Scott Whiteley here to talk about his life as a professional singer, singing with the Tallis Scholars. And Tim, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being on here.
Thank you so much, mate. It's great to be here. And I'm glad we managed to make it work out, like in the same time zone even. So that's pretty neat.
So you're currently on tour.
That is right.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, all right. So this is our second United States tour of the year. We have two with the Tallis Scholars, one in sort of March, April time, and one end of November, beginning of December. And so this is our second one for this year. We have had 5 shows already, and we've got 2 to go. And we flew from, where did we travel from yesterday? Oh, I know. We were in Spartanburg, South Carolina yesterday. And we drove up to Charlotte and then flew via Atlanta to San Francisco. And we've got a show tonight in Berkeley. So, yeah, that was quite a long travel day yesterday.
Great. Well, I want to get into your life touring with Tallis Scholars, but why don't you give us a little quick intro about you, about how you got into singing and what your musical upbringing was like?
Alrighty. Well, I mean, I think for an Englishman, my trajectory was pretty common. So I was a chorister. I was a choir boy when I was a kid. So I started off when I was like 7, 8 in the choir of York Minster in the northeast of England. I kind of had a bit of an in there because my dad was the organist. But he wasn't on the audition panel. He wasn't there, you know. So I got into that choir, and that was the best start in choral life that you can be given. You know, to have the ability to sing every day, the opportunity to sing every day, reading new music every day, and it's just discipline training. Although what do I mean by that, discipline training? It taught us discipline, and professionalism actually at an extremely young age, which is invaluable, you know. And so that's where I started out. I did that.
What college?
This was York Minster.
Okay.
This was York Minster, so the Cathedral of York in the northeast of England. That's where I was, and it had a school attached to it, the York Minster Choir School, which sadly doesn't exist anymore. They had to let that go around the time of the pandemic. So the choir boys now all go to another school in York. So that was kind of an end of an era. Then after that, I went to secondary school where I sang in the chapel choir. I didn't really do much. But you know full well where I went to school, right?
No. Where?
You don't remember this? Maybe I didn't mention it to you. Well, you and I have something in common. My high school was Oakham.
Oh my God! Really?
Yeah, that was my high school. That was my secondary school. Yeah, that's where I went.
Did you study? Did you work with? Was David Woodcock there at the time?
He was my pastoral tutor and my director of music. Yeah.
Wow! I had no idea.
Yeah, and his now wife was my French teacher. And in fact, when Peter Phillips had his 70th birthday, which was on a boat on the Thames in London, a couple of months back now, David was there with his wife. And so I've seen David on and off ever since I've left. But I haven't seen my former French teacher. So that was kind of cool. That was fun.
Yeah.
Anyway,
just real quick, for those that don't know, Oakham is this small, can I say medieval town or very old town?
Yeah, it's an old town. That's right.
Yeah, in England, where I was first introduced to the Tallis Scholars through their summer course. Anyway, please continue.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And in fact, I think I was at the first meeting of David Woodcock and Peter Phillips. That was so weird. That was. I mean, to look back on it now, that is really weird, given what I now do. But there was a kid in the year above me at Oakham called Dan Hyde, who is now the director of music at King's College, Cambridge. Mm-hmm. And he ran a small chamber choir at Oakham. And David took this small chamber choir to Stamford, which is a town next to Oakham. And Peter Phillips gave us a masterclass. And yeah, that's actually the first time I met Peter Phillips. I mean, I don't
What year
really
was this, roughly?
This will have been 98, 99, maybe 98.
Okay.
Possibly 97. Yeah, maybe 97, actually. Yeah, so, I mean, I remember only a little bit of that. I'm sure Peter doesn't remember it at all. I have no idea, you know. Oh, no, he does. No, I'm sure he does. But yeah, so that was weird. But then, yeah, so I finished my studies there, and I was fortunate enough to get a place, a choral scholarship at Christ Church in Oxford, but not studying music, studying German and linguistics.
Were you always a bass? Baritone bass?
Yeah. Hey, that's a good question. Right. Yeah, that is a good question. So I remember this distinctly, actually, like at the age of 13. So I was what they called the head chorister in my last year at York, and which meant I got some of the solo action, which was great. You know, I had a great time in my last year. But as often happens, you know, in the last year, my voice broke. So it was like 2 weeks before Easter, 1994, I think. And I just went into the rehearsal and I was like, okay, not feeling so good today. And the director, Philip Moore, he took me aside after the rehearsal and we did a few scales and what have you. And he said, I think it's time, you know. And, you know, you might imagine that I might have been a bit bummed out by that. I was absolutely thrilled. You know, I thought, you know, fantastic. I've done this for a long time, but now in the summer term that's coming up, I'm going to get to hang around with my friends and play cricket after school and not have to go and sing. You know, I was pretty thrilled about that. But my brother was in the choir and my mom, obviously my father was playing the organ. And so my mom took me into the cathedral for Easter Sunday. So 2 weeks before my voice was broken. And the processional hymn was played over, you know, and I just thought to myself, okay, well, apparently I'm not a treble anymore. So what do I do? You know, so I just opened my mouth and saw what came out. And it was this kind of Cookie Monster kind of thing.
Cookie Monster.
Yeah. So that was pretty weird. But yeah, you know, I didn't have one of these gradual sort of decline from treble through alto into tenor or whatever. It just when it dropped, you know, and that was it.
I hear that's mostly the case for lower voices. Do you hear that too?
Yeah, I do hear that. Absolutely. Yeah, completely. I mean, I think I was, I think as is often the case, I was more baritonal at the start, but it started dropping fairly quickly up till when I was about 18, I reckon. But yeah, so that's my history, man. I mean, I did 4 years at Christ Church, and then I moved to Austria.
Great.
And I set up my own. I co-founded rather a group for early music there, with no aspirations of it going pro or anything like that. You know, I just found these younger guys there, these two countertenors who were really enthusiastic for the repertoire, but weren't that au fait with it, weren't that, you know, well versed in it. And you know, when I was 17, 18, I was inhaling a lot of like grunge and rock music, and a hell of a lot of Renaissance polyphony. I remember just going on whatever it was at the time. I mean, was it eBay? I have no idea. And just buying all of these, because I was not, you know, I didn't have that much money, you know, and just finding these secondhand Tallis Scholars. Sorry, Peter. Secondhand Tallis Scholars records, and buying them up, yeah, and that was actually, where I came to early music. Early music came through a variety of different avenues, but one of them was certainly buying all of those records
So
in quite a short amount of time.
I can imagine that you and more of the Tallis Scholars these days kind of grew up listening to Tallis Scholars. They've been around so long. I actually had a similar experience, I guess, first through Oakham and eventually listening to more of their stuff. Yeah, that must be a trip? Oh, I would imagine for Peter, particularly.
Oh yeah. Well, I think it's he's a very happy man. As you know, you know him. He has created a product and has kept it consistent. And that is so key in this business, to keep that consistency. I work for several other groups. I have done along the way where there's been a bad show, or it hasn't quite gone right, and Peter wouldn't put up with that, and I don't put up with that actually. It's no one wants to have a bad gig, but no, with Tallis Scholars, it's very rare that there's ever anything really out, so I think for him, to come back to your question, for him, it's absolutely fantastic that he's now got singers who listened to Tallis Scholars growing up, so they know full well what that sound is.
What it's supposed to sound like.
Right. Exactly. So I think he's understandably pleased about that, and it keeps that consistency, and it means that, yeah. The funny thing is that there's no. Well, I know this is your interview, but I'm going to ask you a question.
Please.
What do you think it is that you need to be to sing in the Tallis Scholars? What kind of voice do you need?
I imagine there's like a list of priorities that
Sure.
I think that I also scout for when I'm trying to staff bird ensemble. You gotta have a good voice. You gotta be able to read, and you gotta be able to sing in tune.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like those three are pretty big for me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They're the three.
Sound boring and basic, but it's
not
crucial.
All, not at all. No, they are absolutely crucial. And I would add to that with Tallis Scholars. You kind of. So those are the three basic pillars. I completely concur with that. But with Tallis Scholars, there is a specific kind of voice that Peter prefers, and we hear this word used quite a lot, and that word is blade, and blade in the voice, and I guess what that means, when I was growing up and having lessons in my late teens and early 20s, one of my teachers, one of the first things I remember him saying is that, look, there's a cordial voice and there's everything else around it. And he could hear that the core of my voice was pretty strong, and I think that is what Tallis Scholars sound is all about. It's about this strength of core to the voice. It's about, and then moving on to the tuning element. It's minutiae of tuning in terms of for me personally, upper partials, being able to make the sound spin, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's that I would add that for the Tallis Scholars. There is a specific kind of voice. There's the people have come in and gone and not done that much for the group and gone off and had absolutely fabulous solo careers. Mm-hmm. I am 100% not in that category. I have done solo work. I enjoy doing solo work, but my main interest is in the ensemble.
So, just if we can linger a little bit on the Tallis Scholar sound, this is something I've thought about for a while. I don't know if you've noticed the same thing, but I've been listening to Tallis Scholars for a while, and their older recordings with like Tessa and Deborah on top. When I listen to those sopranos, let's just take them for example, that sounds different than the sopranos I hear these days. I might say the same thing for the bassist, sort of. It sounded like he played it a little bit bigger back then. I'm curious, if you've noticed those things too, and what your kind of take on the sound over the years has been.
Yeah, absolutely. You and I, we both grew up with Tessa, Debbie, Sally, Jan at the top, and Ruth Holton as well, and that. I mean, what I would say is that when I first sang with the group, it was really forthright. I mean, the sound was really forthright. It was, it was great, because I'd worked in other ensembles where, I felt that the way I was singing was compromising my voice somehow. I was being put into a little box, but all of a sudden I stepped into this different arena of sound, and it was, that was quite something. And I think that's what Peter and Steve Smith managed to capture, was the forthright nature of the singing, Now, I would say still these days it is forthright, but it's not quite as, I don't know.
I agree.
I don't know how to describe it. Not
I feel
quite
like I know where you're going, but I agree. But yes, please continue.
Not quite as brazen, maybe.
Yeah.
As it was back then, and I think that's a combination of things. I think that is generation shifting. And what I mean by that is that, and again, this kind of feeds neatly into another thing that we were going to talk about, I think. I reckon it is simply to do with the fact that you have a lot more ensemble singing going on these days. You have a lot of people coming from different backgrounds. A huge development in the UK, and thank goodness, a huge development has been the introduction of girls into the cathedral choirs in the UK. So they are finally being given the opportunity to develop their singing from a very young age in a professional environment, singing every day in a liturgical context. That was starting to happen when I, in the early 90s, I guess. But it really came to fruition in the sort of mid to late 90s in the UK. And so that, coupled with the sort of the springing up of a lot of other groups that, wanted to either do early music or choral music generally, there were different sounds going on. Peter always talks about this sound that he heard when he heard the Clerks of Oxenford under David Woolston, and he just had that sound in his head and he wanted to recreate it. And that's what he does every time he stands on stage with the Tallis Scholars. And I think that sound is still there, the one that he's thinking about. Otherwise, he'd be telling us to do something different. But maybe, I don't know, maybe it was more, and I'm perfectly happy to be shot down here, but maybe it was more a group of soloists that could sing together back then, and it's more a group of ensemble singers now.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That's actually how I hear it too, and I don't know why anyone would want to shoot you down for that. That just seems plain to me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's great. So you kind of hinted that you have another group. Do you direct other groups? Talk a little bit about those groups.
Okay, so I don't direct any group. I have been programming for an ensemble that I founded in 2004. I co-founded. As I mentioned to you, I studied German at university. So part of my degree was to go to a German-speaking country for a year. And I taught English in Vienna, in Austria. And at one of the schools, it was a music-based high school. And I met Terry Way, countertenor. I was 21, he was 17, I think. And his mate, Jakob, who was also Jakob Huckmann, also countertenor. And they had mentioned to me, for whatever reason, I have no idea. Terry was bilingual, so he'd always used to mess around in the classes I was teaching. So he kind of caught my attention, and I'd heard that he was a top singer, but he just had mentioned to me that he was doing some Josquin Mass, and I was like, "Whoa, what? You're doing a Josquin Mass?" He said, "Yeah, this is Vienna. I mean, this is the heart of Mozart, Schubert, Liszt, Brahms. They're not so interested in Josquin. You know what I mean?" And so he had a little group going. Well, not a little group even. It was just ad hoc. He just got 4 singers together to do a Josquin Mass, and he was like, "What is this music, man? I mean, this is insane. I've never really done any of this before." And I was like, "Well, you know what? I'm going to come back after my studies. I'm going to move to Vienna, and I'd like to set something up. How about it?" And he said, "Yeah, get in touch." So that was 2002-3, and in 2004, I moved there permanently and set it up. And yeah, we just, I mean, it was my plan. I was like, well, how do we try and stick out from the mainstream here? We wanted to go pro, but we didn't know if we were good enough. Number one, we made a demo CD with a variety of different things, but I was like, we kind of need a focus. So I was like, who were the composers in Vienna in the Renaissance, in the Renaissance time, period, in the 16th century? And all right, I mean, you've probably heard of Philip de Monte, of course. I mean, he's done some good stuff, and most people know de Monte because he wrote the first part to Bird's Quomodo answer, Super Flumina Ballonis. Yeah, so I was like, there's de Monte, but okay, that's one guy. I mean, who else is there? And there's like, oh my goodness me, there's at least 30, 40, 50 composers in there that no one had ever looked at before. So I was like, hey, well, let's do that. And yeah, I was very lucky to be in the right place at the right time with the demo CD of the group. Mm-hmm. We're called Cinquecento. We're named after a model of Fiat car. No, we're not. Cinquecento is the Italian for the 16th century. The year's 500. They leave the 1,000 off. Yeah. So and I just happened to be in the right place at the right time, and met a guy who was interested in demo CD. He happened to be working for a label called Hyperion Records in London, and about a week later, I got an email from him saying, "Look, me and the boss would like to meet in London to talk about you guys making records with us." Wow. So that was it. And we've done, is it 16 now, maybe? I think the 16th is coming out in May.
Say the name of your group again. I'll make sure to put a link of it.
Yeah. We are called Ensemble Cinquecento. So the Italian for 500. Great. Cinquecento.
Is that the only group so you say you program for it? So you're not.
I've done a lot. I mean, at the beginning, I did a lot, and as the guys, as we all sort of developed as an ensemble, we'd all go away and like get other ideas and bring them into the group. And I mean, at the beginning, I was certainly the one with the majority with the most sort of knowledge of the repertoire. So I think that's how it started like that. But as we went on, it became clear that we were all sort of falling down rabbit holes in libraries and finding new stuff we wanted to do, and yeah, so we are very much a democracy. I mean, that's not too tough with 5 of us, and yeah, I mean, we don't gig that much. I mean, we'd love to. I'd love to bring the group over here. We've been over once for Kathy Fayette Boston Early Music, and we've been to Canada as well, but. I'd love to bring the group over to the US at some point. But the problem is that a lot of the guys are quite busy. Terry has a pretty big Baroque opera career. Torre, the tenor, one of the tenors, he has another group that he's running right now and is going places. So we all have our little things going on, and we're not 21-year-old kids anymore, when where we just like hang out the whole time and sing this music for fun and hope that one day we'd be able to do it professionally.
Yeah, I was there.
But I know, man, I know. I mean, that is part of your story as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that when you're in your 20s, it just seems like you have a lot more time than one does now, especially as they add on responsibilities. But
Oh yeah.
so, Tim, tell us what your hookup with the Tallis Scholars was. What was your
Oh,
way in?
okay, yeah, sure. So, as you know, Tallis Scholars is not auditioned. If I could count, I could not count on the fingers of both my hands the number of singers that have sort of come up to us after shows and said, "Have you auditioned for these guys?" Yeah. The answer is you don't. I think simply what happens is that the regular members of the group, they have a good feeling for who would be suitable, but of course you have to sing with those people. So I would never ever recommend anyone for the Tallis Scholars who I hadn't sung with. I mean, that wouldn't make any sense, because hearing somebody is different. Yeah, you can hear somebody and go, yeah, I'd make that recommendation, but to really feel if it's going to fit, you need to sing with them. So my in with the group was I was doing a recording project, I think, in Oxford with another group that I sing for called Alla Mire, directed by David Skinner. You know those guys, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
And we just had this project in Oxford in 2007, and my bass partner, desk partner, was Rob McDonald, and so he and I had been singing on this project. We'd sung together. We'd made a couple of records with Alla Mire before that, so we knew each other pretty well. Anyway, it turned out that at the same time, so we were doing sessions in the day, and in the evenings, Rob was like scampering off to Merton College to go and record with Tallis Scholars. And I think it was the second day that he was doing that I got a phone call from him at lunchtime going, "Hey man, the baritone Don has come down with the flu or something. He was sick, and you're in Oxford." And I said to Peter that, you'd be around and that you'd probably fit all right. So how about it? I planned to go out for dinner and drinks with friends I hadn't seen for a while. And I was like, oh, no, I wasn't. I was like, okay, yeah, I'll come and do that. All right. I mean, of course I was super nervous about it. Well, especially given the fact that, I walked into Merton Chapel. I met Peter. I shook his hand. He handed me a copy of Josquin's Missa Fortuna Desperata. And after about 5 minutes, the red light went on, and we just started recording. There was no rehearsal. That was it. He'd never heard me sing before. And so, he has a lot of trust and faith in, I think, in the regular singers of the ensemble to bring people in that would work, to an extent. And I am forever indebted to Robbie, of course, for his introduction. And he knows that. I've bought him enough beers. But yeah, I mean, but again, I mean, it was right place, right time kind of thing, and yeah, I mean, so David Skinner, who runs Alla Mire, he was at Magdalen College at the time that I was coming out of Christchurch. He needed a baritone to bolster a tour for an amateur choir that he was taking on tour to Belgium for a couple of shows. I turned up and did that. He thought that what I did was really good, and he was setting up Alla Mire, and he wanted a baritone to go with Stephen Harold on tenor and Robbie on bass. And and so that's how I fell in with that crowd.
I think it's worth highlighting the point, the audition point, that there aren't formal auditions, or very rarely there are. I get that too. A lot of people emailing in and asking for an audition, and there's just no time for it's time consuming. The only way to properly do one is to get the other singers in there too and kind of hear what they're like in the line. So yeah, by recommendation for me has worked the best.
Yeah, no, full on. I mean, I can give you a comparative. example, which is the group that I first started working for professionally. I went on audition for, and I went on audition for twice. I was 21 when I auditioned the first time. I was 24 when I auditioned the second. I got invited to work with the group after the second audition, and that is a group in Belgium called the Huelgas Ensemble, Huelga.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of them. Yeah.
Directed by a guy called Paul van Navel. And his audition process, wow. I mean, it is, if I were ever to audition, set up my own group and audition, then I would certainly be taking elements of what he does. I mean, how do I describe Paul van Navel? He's a very difficult man to describe. Eclectic, I would say. Yeah, that's a good word. But he knows what he wants, So the audition starts off because the group performs quite a lot of chansons and madrigals and that kind of thing. The audition will start off with you reading medieval Italian and medieval French poetry.
Wow.
He will give you the poetry and he will read the verses to you, and you have to read them back to him. And that is just simply how quick you assimilate. How A, if you've ever had any training in it, and B, how quickly you can assimilate and learn that poetry. He'll give you a couple of cracks of the whip at that, and then he will ask you to intone each line of verse that he's given you in an ascending hexachord scale, and then in a descending hexachord scale.
Wow.
And then he'll do a bit of range testing, how high up can you go, how low can you go. Then he'll put an A tuning fork down, and he'll go, I want you to sing this A for as long as you can. And then within a couple of seconds, sing a low B flat for as long as you can, and then sing the A again. And then he does the same with a high B flat, A, high B flat, A. And at the end of each time, we'll just put the A440 tuning fork down and just see where you are, see how it fits. Then there's sight reading, and that's it.
That's obscene. I mean, that is like Navy SEAL, and then training you for war.
It is, isn't it?
I'm impressed, though. That's the most thorough audition I've ever heard.
It's pretty hardcore because a lot of guys come into that audition process and they go, okay, so I didn't need to bring any prepared pieces. There isn't an accompanist here. I mean, what is going on? So yeah, but that was my introduction to that. So that is a group that does audition, and he auditions every year. And I mean, I think out of 15 applicants or 15 shortlisted candidates that he had last month or a couple months back, he has booked maybe 2 of them to do a contract. But he's quite old now, and he's not winding things down. But the group has maybe, I don't know, at the maximum like 20 gigs a year. It's not much,
Yeah.
So it has dialed down from what it was, and whether that's him dialing things down, whether that's yet another symptom of the industry, what's happened to the industry, I'm not sure.
How quickly a singer can fit in, I think, is an understated value, especially in an ensemble of 10 or so. I'm remembering immediately over the summer when we had you and Patrick and Caroline and Stephen singing with us for that concert. We had maybe an hour and a half of rehearsal, singing music we've all learned and have performed many times with our own separate groups. And it was remarkable how quickly everyone was sort of fitting in together. It was, I said this on a post, but it was like some sort of self-improving AI or something. It was, it was remarkable. And it's not like we talked about it. This stuff happens inside your brains. And that is an understated value or importance of ensemble singing.
Absolutely. I think, when people ask me what is it to be an ensemble singer, it's a very difficult art to teach. I would argue that it is an art that you have to experience again and again and again. You have to be in groups, and you have to work your way through different groups. And the more different ensembles you can work with, the better your experience is going to be. But the one thing that I always answer is, I don't know if it's I don't know if it's any good, but my answer is always ensemble singing is more about listening than it is about singing. The singing, yes, of course, you are singing, so that's absolutely key, no question. But your ability to listen and just tune in to everything else that's going on around you is key.
Yeah,
it's so simple, isn't it? But I mean, yeah, there's everything.
It's simple, but these simple core concepts are quite hard to master at a high level, actually.
Yeah.
So I just want to pivot to touring life. Sure. With Tallis Scholars. I recently, with Bird Ensemble, went to we did a 4-day tour or something in Alabama.
I saw some pictures on Facebook, man. You were in the Hampton Inns and Suites in Birmingham, Alabama.
Yeah, you've been in there?
Yeah, we've been in there with Tallis Scholars, and you sang, I guess, for Fred Teodo.
Yes, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice guys. Got hooked up with those guys over there. It was a great experience. We ate too much Waffle House. We have a shout out to my man Sam there, who is obsessed, and every emoji reaction on our WhatsApp group is a waffle, because that's what he wants.
Yeah.
But we went on this 4-day tour, and I'm just at the end of it tired. I can't imagine doing this much longer. And you touring at the Tallis Scholars, you guys do a lot of concerts a year. How many concerts?
I think this year it's like 80, 83 or something. It has been in our anniversary year in 2013. It was 99. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we do a lot of shows a year. We do. And I guess, I think in terms of like the United States touring, those are some of the most intense tours that we do. We have just come off the back of four gig travel days in a row. So we had a relatively easy start to the tour, where we had a gig day the first day, then a travel day, then another show the next day. But yeah, and then so we had Boston, we had New York, we had Athens, Georgia, and Spartanburg, South Carolina. All four of those were in a row. So that was Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And also in the winter tours, people are gonna be carrying maybe a little cold with them or whatever, and it doesn't make life easy. But you find a way of dealing with it, and if singers don't, then there have been occasions where singers have dropped out. We have stood 9 singers on the stage, and we've just coxed and boxed and done it. That's all you can do. But I think we have said to the management that any more than 4 in a row is too much. I think we've said that, maybe 5. I can't quite remember. If my colleagues see this, they will no doubt correct me there. But we certainly felt relief after the Spartanburg show. And the Spartanburg show was quite a dry acoustic, and it's gig 4, and you're like, oh, come on, give me a supportive building as well, please. But it was cool, and that's a really sweet little program there. And Aaron Harp, who sorry, I'm only talking about this because it's the last thing we did, so I remember. He's such a sweet guy, and we were very happy to go there and sing for those guys. But as we are for anywhere we go in the States, everyone is just so nice to us, and that's what keeps us going as well. If we have happy audiences, then you do, even if it is gig 4 at the end of a 4 gig run, you go, yeah, this is why I'm doing it.
So how do you keep that sort of fire alive, for each show? I know on some level it's a job, and maybe that sense of duty is what you really need to tap into to sustain a tour of the same program or similar programs. How do
Yeah.
you do it? I mean,
Well,
have you thought about how to conjure up that passion when needed?
yeah, I mean there are many levels to it. Well, there are several levels to it. One is, you know, the beginning of a tour. We will have rehearsed the program in 3 hours, and then we go out on the road and we do the show. So the first couple of gigs, we know the music, and we are starting to develop sort of our favorite moments in the pieces, kind of thing. Each individual. That's what I mean. And so I think as the tour goes on, for example, I don't know, in the show in Athens 2 days ago, I just noticed a line that my tenor colleague Tom was doing, and I just came off stage at halftime. I was like, "Hey man, how did I never hear that bar before? That is cool, man. What you're doing there, and that kind of thing." So, as the tour goes on, it kind of shifts a little bit and changes. To keep the passion and the fire there, I mean, certainly So yesterday was, or no, the day before yesterday was gig 5 of the 7 concerts that we're doing. At that stage, it's also about vocal health. It's just making sure that you're doing everything correctly. And if you are slightly under the weather, which a couple of us invariably are, I was fighting off a cold at the beginning of the tour. Touch wood, I defeated it. But that is a worrying element, because you don't want to be singing on anything. So, I mean, people's concentrations, people's sort of focuses, they will shift differently over a tour, depending on how fit they're feeling and how vocally fit they're feeling. Then there's just fatigue, and fatigue is just completely common. But I think that's what keeps us going. It's just it's this team sport, and we're there for the team, and this team sport is delivering to audiences. And enjoying the music that we're doing, even though, we can be under significant strain. As I say, doing 4 travel day shows in a row, that's, that can be tough. But we got through it.
You said a few minutes ago, hearing, what is it, your partner hearing a bar that he hadn't heard before, or something.
Yeah.
That touches on something I really love that happens during tour is you hear the music kind of evolve in a way. Yeah. You hear it differently the more you do it. And, I feel like that's really best achieved through performances. No matter, I know you can rehearse things to death, and maybe you can start feeling some of these things, but there's something special about and unique about concerts that kind of bring that kind of change in the music.
100%, and that's essentially what I was saying as well. I guess is that it is evolving, and each audience that we perform to on a tour in the United States will have a slightly different version of it. Not out of anything other than the way that you maybe approach a line, having done it the night before one way, you're going to do it a slightly different way the next night. I mean, in terms of tuning, you're always going to have to nail that. So that is a major consideration, of course. In fact, my top consideration. But I agree with you completely. It evolves, and it always will evolve, and it is only something that can happen in concerts. I mean, rehearsals are great, but you just have to feel that together. You don't want somebody, Peter would never want to sort of read the riot act to us as to whether it has to be exactly that or exactly that over 6 or 9 hours of rehearsal. As we go through a tour, we will reduce our rehearsal time before a gig, simply because, well, we know the program really well. And yes, there will be little things to be picked up on from the show the night before. But I always find that a little bit weird as well, because, every night something's going to happen. So what you can rehearse what could have gone slightly better the night before, but we know that it didn't go that well the night before, so we're definitely going to be concentrated on the fact that that's going to be good. So do you know what I mean? It's a funny one, isn't it? But you're right. I mean, it evolves, and each performance is going to be slightly different, but in a good way.
Yeah, keeps things exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about, with the few minutes we have left here, the state of ensemble singing in the UK. So
Sure.
Us over here in the US of A, think of England, or think of the UK as the like a factory of high quality choral singers.
Okay.
How is it going over there? Are singers? Is there a lot of work for singers? And for which groups? And how are they funded? And how much money do professional choral singers get over there?
Right. Okay. Well, I mean,
It's time to spill the tea.
I can spill a little bit of tea or beans. Yeah, sure. So, I work with the Tallis Scholars. I work with Alan Murray. I have in the past worked with Eric Whittaker's group, his Eric Whittaker Singers, but that was a while ago. But of course, I have a lot of friends, not least my brother, who is also a professional ensemble bass, who sings at Windsor Castle, the chapel there. So I know a lot of people that work in that business. I would say that if you're looking at cathedral music, cathedral choirs, that is, that certainly in the major institutions, life is pretty good. Life is okay. There is definitely been a dip in the number of boys interested in becoming trebles. The auditions in certain areas of the UK do not attract as many as they once did. I think with you're right. I mean, it isn't. Yeah, there are a lot of groups now, and that is different from when I started out and maybe in the 90s. There was some good. There was some exactly right. But it's kind of exploded, and I think well, from what I hear, the workload is going down and the number of singers wanting work is going up.
Mm-hmm. I'm getting that here too.
Yeah, so there is, the industry is shifting and changing. It is wonderful to have all of these youth sort of choir programs. So there's the choir Tenebrae, who are doing very well. Great, fantastic group, and rightly popular. And they have like a young singers program. The 16, another of the top groups, they also have a young singers program. And then you have a lot of other groups out there that do a lot of educational work, groups like Stile Antico or Voces 8, for example. So there is this huge focus on enthusing and getting young singers interested and into the business, which is wonderful. But I just wonder, from what I've heard, that if there's enough work for all of these singers when they're kind of done. And I think the answer at the moment is probably no. Mm-hmm. Which is sad, which we need to work out ways of changing that. But each group will go through a good year and a bad year in terms of the amount of work that they're getting. It does go up and down. I mean, the time to start worrying, of course, is when you see over a 3 or 4 year stretch that it's not really going up, or it is going down. I don't know the figures for that, but
how meaningful the money is to the singers. It has some interesting implications on the sort of contracting and dynamics between directors and singers. If it's not paying enough, then only the kind of financially well off can kind of engage or sing in these groups, and also maybe for them, since it's not paying the mortgage, they can kind of choose what sort of experiences they can favor. They can favor better choral experiences over others.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think more than ever, a lot of singers on the ensemble circuit in the UK that I have been lucky enough to work with do teach or do have permanent positions at one of the top cathedrals in London, or do have another string to their bow, in terms of income. And I am currently in a position where I am trying to up my teaching game. I'm trying to up. I work as a voiceover speaker. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't.
And so I'm trying to sort of push my focus a little bit more on that as well. Just things that can supplement the income that I have from the singing stuff. Because there are months now where it is surprisingly little going on. And I'd say that, me and some of my colleagues in Tallis Scholars are some of the more active guys on the professional circuit. But, even for us, it's, we are noticing that work is dipping a little bit. And obviously the cost of living is going up. I just had an email from my landlord this morning, which I was not terribly happy about. He's hiking my rent by €100 a month.
What's his name? I'm just kidding.
I know, man. I know.
I'm kidding.
It's fine. I just need to give a couple more singing lessons a month, and we're good, But still, it's not getting any easier, with a little bit of work dipping and the cost of living going up, But everyone's feeling that, it's not just us. It's a global thing,
Yeah, I think things have just changed so much since the 90s. I mean, the idea that a choral director can just make a living just choral directing is crazy to me. I mean, you got to know how to do marketing, admin, media. You got to know how to work with video and audio. You kind of just got to do a bunch of stuff and throw it at the wall and see what sticks. I mean,
you do it, man. Sorry, you do it incredibly well. It's very impressive what you do. I'd just like to tell you that because you are the next generation of. Well, you are accessing.
Tim, we're in the same generation.
I know we're the same generation, but we're kind of not in a way. I'm kind of like left behind with the how does this technological thing work? And you're like grabbing the bull by the horns and going, hey man, guys, it's like this, and we're going to do this, and blah blah, and with filming and video shoots and stuff, and I mean, and I admire you for that, man. Congratulations.
Well, thanks, Tim. I mean, my big secret is that all of this is a big marketing cost for what I do with Scribe, and that audio and video stuff is really picked up and enabled me to do more music, actually. So I've sort of made a weird life for myself. Tim,
great.
We can talk I feel like we could go for so long, but maybe we'll have to do that in person in the future, hopefully someday.
That sounds good.
Ring. But I just want to thank you for coming on and sharing your story and your views with us.
You are welcome. It's been an absolute pleasure for me. Man, I wish you all the very best. Maybe we will be able to meet up at some point on a States trip or when you're in Europe next.
Yeah, and tell us how people can follow you, what you're up to. You don't have an Instagram, but you have a Facebook. Do you have a website?
I'm on Facebook. It's just my name, Tim Scott Whiteley. I'm on there. And Cinquecento is also on Facebook. Tallis Scholars is on Facebook and Insta, I think. And so you can follow any of that there, and the websites obviously as well. Maybe I need to join the 21st century and get on Insta.
I don't know about that. We can talk about that later.
Okay.
All right, Tim. Well, thank you so much for your time. Good luck with the rest of the tour. Yeah.
Thank you, mate. Fantastic. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.